Hello everyone. Welcome to Edinburgh.
This is actually my first time in Vietnam, but I feel like I've gotten the true, Saigon treatment. I've been to many of the districts. I have been having wonderful Vietnamese food, which is great. I went on the Mekong Delta and went biking and paddle boarding. And then yesterday, I was trying to figure out how to get to the Reverie Hotel, and I was doing my Google Maps, and all of a sudden, a motorcyclist came and snatched my phone. So now I've really been to Vietnam. And I still love it. You gotta have a good story. I go to Singapore, it's like nice and lovely, everything works. It's boring. Do I have a story? No, I come here. This is what it's about. So let me just tell you a little bit about, as Nam said, the origins of Endeavor. But let me just say first how proud I am of what our chapter in Vietnam has already done. We have this incredible board. I watched this local selection panel earlier today, and everyone was debating and deciding whether entrepreneurs were ready to go on to the international panel. Lanang and your team, Fong and Chang, have done such a wonderful job preparing entrepreneurs. We have 3 Endeavor entrepreneurs, actually 4 from 3 companies already selected from Endeavor in Vietnam. So I don't know if any of them, some of you are in the room from Coffee House, from S-Commerce, and from Topica. So we're very proud. If you want to give them a round. Yeah. And you will hear from one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Fadreen of Bukalapak from Indonesia, right after. But let me take you back 22 years, okay? Why did I even co-found Endeavor? What was the idea? Well, I grew up in just outside of Boston. My parents met actually before high school. They went off to college. They had kids. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I went to Harvard for undergraduate. I went to Yale for law school. This was all according to the plan. And then suddenly I announced, oh, I'm never practicing law. Well, what do you mean? Didn't you just go to law school? Oh yeah, no, not for me. So my professors, actually 3 of my classmates are now running for president in the United States. But that wasn't my plan either. I wasn't interested in politics. But professors took pity on me and sent me down to Latin America. So I was living in Buenos Aires and traveling to Brazil and Chile and Mexico, living in Argentina. And this was the mid-1990s. And what I realized is it was very strange. People could start a micro business and get a $100 microcredit loan, or the top 10 families get $100 million in investments. But between $100 and $100 million, there was nothing. There was no venture capital. There were no entrepreneurs. There were no self-made role models. And I was so confused because back in the US, it was the Netscape and Yahoo, and Steve Jobs was coming back to Apple, and no one understood. There wasn't even a word in Spanish or Portuguese for entrepreneur. So I thought, no wonder no one's becoming an entrepreneur. You can't get money, and you can't even tell your parents about your crazy idea because there's no word. And what hit home is when actually a taxi driver had informed me he had an engineering degree. And he was driving a taxi because there would never be any use for someone with his skills, which was really strange, again, coming from Silicon Valley. So I said, this is ridiculous. There's so much talent, there's so much capital, but there's no trust. Back to the trusted network that Nam was talking about. So we thought, and there's no stories that make sense to people. I believe in the power of role models and storytelling. And when I would tell the story of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak starting Apple Computer out of Steve Jobs' home garage, people would say, Linda, nice story, but how does that relate to my life? It's Latin America. No one's going to give me money for my crazy idea, and I don't even have a garage. So I was like, all right, we need some local stories. So I went home and told my parents what I was doing. They, of course, thought this was a terrible idea. No one in Latin America thought this was a good idea. I was known as Chica Loca, the crazy girl, for saying there were even entrepreneurs in these markets. But I said, you know what? We're going to find some examples, and then they'll believe us. So two things happened. But first, we needed money. So like Nem said, people have to pay to get involved with Endeavor. So I went and I found there was one guy in Argentina named Eduardo Elstein. And he was famous for making George Soros the largest real estate owner in the country. So I got a 10-minute meeting with him. And he looks at his watch 5 minutes in, Eduardo does, and he says, okay, I get it. You're here because you want me to introduce you to George Soros. I'll see what I can do. I said, no, Eduardo, I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. This is an organization of, by, and for entrepreneurs. I want your time, your passion, and $200,000. So the meeting had been in English. He turns to his right-hand guy. He says, in Spanish, esta chica está loca. This girl's crazy. And here, she seems so charming. And now it's like you're in one of these bad movies where you're in the shower and she's coming at you with a knife. So I replied in Spanish, Eduardo, estoy decepcionada. I'm disappointed. This from the guy who famously walked into George Soros' office and came out with a $10 million check? You're lucky I asked you for only $200,000. At which point, he stands up and walks out the door. I thought, uh-oh. Well, guess that didn't go so well. And as I was turning to leave, he walks back in with his checkbook and writes the $200,000 check on the spot. And to this day, he says it's the best check he's ever written. Yeah, okay, thank you. People always ask me my startup advice. I always say, stalking is an underrated startup strategy. So we had some cash. Now we define the entrepreneurs. So I kept hearing about this young kid named Wences Casares. Wences had grown up on a sheep farm in Patagonia. And talk about having no last name that people recognized. He was a sheep farmer from Patagonia. But he had started the first internet service provider in Argentina. But the business was basically stolen out from under him by the local telecom company. But he was undeterred, and he decided to start something called Patagon.com, which was going to be the E-Trade of Latin America. This was 1998. No one understood what E-Trade was. 34 local investors turned him down. But we met him, and anyone who meets Wences knows that he literally can sell ice to Eskimos. So we were so entranced, we put him through a local panel and the international selection panel, and he becomes an Endeavor entrepreneur. So the first thing is he needed some help, so we helped find him a chief operating officer. We helped get him $4 million in venture financing. Fred Wilson, one of the most famous New York investors, this was the first investment he made outside of the United States in Wences. And then Wences wound up marrying my assistant Belle. He got the full service Endeavor. So today, people are like, oh, I know you have these executive education programs and access to capital markets. I would like the e-girlfriend program that Wences got. Anyway, 18 months later, Wences sells Patagon.com to Banco Santander for $750 million. Suddenly, all 34 investors who turned him down call me up and say, oh, do you have another kid with a crazy idea? Maybe next time I'll pay attention. To this day, young kids growing up, not only in Argentina, but in Chile, in Peru, in Mexico, will say, if Wences can do it, I can too. And today, actually, Wences lives in Silicon Valley. He still spends a lot of time mentoring entrepreneurs. He's on my global board, but he's actually the founder of Zappo, And he's the person who sold, he's Endeavor Patient Zero, but he's known as Bitcoin Patient Zero. He sold Mark Zuckerberg and Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn and Bill Gates their first Bitcoin. And today, 5 to 10% of the world's entire Bitcoin goes through his Zappos vaults. So hopefully we'll get Wences here one day. But two of the people that were paying attention to Wences' story were these kids named Marcos and Hernan that had gone to Stanford Business School. And in 1998, when you asked anyone if they were going back to their home country, going back to Vietnam, going back to Argentina, they'd say, of course not. We're staying in, we're staying in California and working for, eBay, or we're going to go back to New York and work for Goldman Sachs, but why would we go back to Argentina? But they had heard about Wences' story. So they said, you know what? We're going to go back to Buenos Aires, and we're going to take this eBay model. We're not going to work here in Silicon Valley. We're going to take that model back to Latin America. And guess what? We're going to have to adopt it, because here, everybody trusts FedEx. They trust UPS. There, no way. We're going to get buyers and sellers to actually meet in cafes. This is how it started, to look and see that they had the check, see that they had the actual good that they were selling, so people would be able to trust it. That company is called Mercado Libre, and they also became Endeavor entrepreneurs. Today, Mercado Libre is valued at $31 billion. Apart from Spotify, it's the highest valued tech company outside the US or China. Marcos still runs Mercado Libre. He's still CEO. He's vice chairman of Endeavor Argentina, and he embodies the spirit of paying it forward. So now he invests and mentors many other young people coming up. And Hernan and the CFO of Mercado Libre now run the most important venture capital firm in Latin America because they've been there. They know what it's like to hire and fire. They know what it's like when you're running out of cash and you don't want to tell your investors. So that's the other thing that we're seeing in markets where Endeavor's been, is that the founder to funder model is taking root. And I think that to me is one of the exciting things we're going to start seeing in this region. No offense to all the investment bankers who are venture capitalists, but we like entrepreneurs who become funders. So where are we today? That's the origin. I will say also that 5 years into Endeavor, the editor of the Brazilian Portuguese dictionary called up our team and saying, in part because of Endeavor's work, they were adding the words empreendedor and empreendedorismo for entrepreneur and entrepreneurship into the lexicon. So that's very exciting. Yay. And one of the things we've helped do, whether it's Bahasa Indonesia or Arabic or Turkish, is really popularize the idea of entrepreneurship. And also, and I've spoken to many people here who are running great accelerator programs, who are running early stage venture capital programs, which is fantastic, and incubators. But I think one of the things that Endeavor is doing that Lan Anh talked about is talk about the scale-up phase. Because I think at the beginning, it's hard. It's not easy to start your idea. I always say that the hardest thing is convincing yourself, right, to take the idea out of the shower, off the napkin, into the world. But really, there are so many people that talk about product market fit or talk about building the initial team or the first capital you raise. What we like at the scale-up phase is dealing with other problems. What happens when you get stuck? You have 500 employees or 800 employees, but how do you make that next leap? How do you go from being a founder to being a CEO? What happens if you started a business with friends and family, but now somebody wants a lifestyle business and somebody wants to grow? How do you access new markets? How do you access your Series B, right? Different than your Series A. These are the kind of issues that Endeavor really loves to grapple with. So today we operate in 36 markets. In fact, how many of you know the band U2? Do you know about? Yeah. So the next market will be Endeavor Ireland, and the lead guitarist, The Edge, is chairman of Endeavor Ireland. So I know there are lots of rock stars here, but we have a real one now. So we've screened over 60,000 entrepreneurs, put them through. The ones who pass the local selection panel go onto one of these international selection panels. We just held one in Tokyo where S-Commerce and Topica were selected among entrepreneurs from 20 countries. And today we work with just under 1,900 entrepreneurs from about 1,400 businesses. And last year, Endeavor entrepreneurs generated $20 billion in revenues and 3 million jobs. And basically, when you become an Endeavor entrepreneur, the idea is to do whatever it is that you need to help your company grow. So is it access to executive education? We have relationships with Stanford and Harvard Business School and now INSEAD. Is it access to markets? Is it access to capital? But I think when it comes down to it, and it was mentioned before, it's this idea of the trusted network. And I love that the Endeavor Vietnam has added something. Yeah, we pay to mentor you. You know you can trust us. So I'm going to use that. So thank you. But there's something else, which is the peer-to-peer network. And I think that what I'm most excited about, and what our next speaker will embody in person, is the peer-to-peer learning. I always say Endeavor is of, by, and for entrepreneurs. And so many of the Endeavor entrepreneurs are now joining our boards, are now co-investing. We have a rules-based co-investment fund where we'll co-invest in any Endeavor entrepreneurs raising capital in a rules-based way. And so many of the investors are Endeavor entrepreneurs paying it forward. But I think so much of the learning, and what I'm most excited about for Vietnam, is that so much of what we've seen in places like Argentina, or Brazil, or Kenya, or Dubai, are actually, it's very similar. These markets, it's very different than Silicon Valley, I would argue, and I would actually argue it's probably different from China. But what I'd say is, and just having met some of you and hearing some of your platforms, I think so many of the opportunities, but the challenges of building things in these emerging economies, it's so different. And yet, to learn from the mistakes and the success stories of people who've done it in markets that are very similar to yours is, to me, what's very exciting. And I know that so many of our entrepreneurs around the world are looking at Vietnam and seeing the incredible opportunities that are emerging. And you can see the skyscrapers going up, and you can just see this country just continuing to develop before our eyes. So I can't wait to have many more come and be able to meet you, and hopefully you can hear some of their stories. So with that, there's no one better to really explain what Endeavor is than an Endeavor entrepreneur, and you are going to hear from one of the best. So Fadrine runs Bugalapak with his co-founder Zaki. They joined Endeavor 3 years ago at an ISP in Dubai, and they're one of Indonesia's 4 unicorns. They've expanded outside of Indonesia. They're in Malaysia, and I hope they're going to be coming to Vietnam. And Fadrine, this is your first time here, but we were meeting the entrepreneur behind Trusted and Social, and he said, no, but 5 members of your team have already come to visit me in Saigon, so it's great. So you are already here. Your team didn't tell you. This is the problem you have. See, you're a CEO, you don't even know what your team's doing. These are the kind of things we can help you with. So really, I'm so proud to call you an Endeavor entrepreneur. Can't wait for you to share your story. So please give a hand to Fadrine Bugalapak.
You need some mic.
Afternoon everyone. Yes, this is my first time here in Vietnam. So excited to be here. I just arrived this morning. My smartphone is still safe, thank God. So one thing I learned about being an entrepreneur is you can not only learn from your experience, but you can also learn from other people's experience. So thank you, Linda, for sharing the experience. So yes, I'm also one of the Endeavor entrepreneurs since 3 years ago. It was in Dubai, the selection panel. It was an amazing experience. And since then, I think, among other things, I actually consider Endeavor as a collective intelligence, So it's a group of network, it's a group of intelligence that you can tap into depending on your needs. So anytime I think of, hey Endeavor, I need people, expert people in HR. Do you have some people? I need expert people in finance. Do you have some people? I need expert in e-commerce. They actually connect us to the Mercado Libre. Which mentioned earlier, and also Soup.com, which is one of the leading e-commerce in Middle East, Karim, and some other leading tech companies around the world. So that's the value of Endeavor that we feel really, really helpful for the company and also for ourselves, for myself as well. So there are some slides, but I'm going to share some stories a bit before that. 2-3 months ago, I was interviewed. It was a live TV interview in Indonesia. No script. I was asked these questions. What is the best technology in Bukalapak? And caught off guard. It was quite unexpected questions. So I'm gonna rephrase in general, like, what do you guys think is the best technology? Anyone? AI, blockchain, IoT, whatever, additive manufacturing or some other buzzword out there. We can answer that later on. So Bukalapak may be a bit difficult, but you can mention just buka, which is Indonesian word for open. Lapak means informal stores or stalls, where so essentially Bukalapak means everyone can open their stalls or everyone can become entrepreneurs in the platforms. Next slide, please. So we started in 2010. So me and Zaki and the other co-founders called Nugroho, we were just graduated from ITB, which is one of the institution in Bandung, Indonesia, in the field of computer science. So we were computer engineers back then, coders, geeks, programmers, you name it. So all we know about is creating code, creating system, creating website, creating applications, right? And then we saw at the time, 2009, 2010, what happened with the global market in technology. We saw what happened with Amazon, Alibaba, and other, I'm not sure how big Mercado Libre at the time, but I think it's quite started taking off. So we heard that as well. But there is no such thing in Indonesia. So we think maybe it's worth to try to develop something like that in Indonesia. Next. So we started in Bukalapak in 2010. The first website or application went live in January 2010. So it has been quite journey so far, 9 years plus. And the amazing thing is that when we first started, we knew nothing about that it will be this big, right? Because at the time, our hypothesis is that, okay, there is this Amazon, Alibaba, and other big companies around the world. There is no such thing in Indonesia. If we can build some, if we can build one, maybe we can achieve somewhat quite big scale. That's just the story. But then we thought, okay, let's create e-commerce. Can we just copy Amazon? Can we just copy Alibaba? Maybe not, because the situation is different, right? For example, everyone in the US have credit card. In Indonesia, the penetration of credit card is only about 3 to 4%. So no one actually uses credit card. Okay, then we need to adjust, right? The payment system. Indonesia right now, a lot of people use bank transfer. And recently, with the rise of digital wallet, so maybe you know about Grab Pay, for example, and then GoPay, which is the competitors of GrabPay in Indonesia, and then some other digital wallet. So that's one difference. The second difference is that in the US, for example, in developed countries, when we talk about retail, traditional retails, we talk about chain modern markets, right? In Indonesia, and I think in Vietnam as well, when we talk about retail, we talk about traditional stores, mom and pop kiosks, right? Small kiosks run by individuals. In Indonesia, we have more than 5 million of them, of these kiosks. And on top of that, there are still a lot of SMEs who are selling from their home. Our president estimated that there are about 60 million SMEs in Indonesia. So that gave us our aha moment that if we want to create e-commerce, perhaps we don't create something like Amazon, which is online retailer, but we create a marketplace platforms. So we are not creating or we are not selling our own product. Instead, we create a platform so that everyone, SMEs especially, can sell their products in the platforms. So that's the second difference, which makes us, which up until now, becomes our competitive advantage. Because essentially everyone, SMEs especially, can open the shops in Bukalapak. This is important because before, SMEs can only sell their stuff in their neighborhood, right? Their local neighborhood. But with Bukalapak, suddenly now we can open the stores all over Indonesia and recently into some other countries as well outside Indonesia. So that really, really gave the boost to their revenues. In fact, in 2017 or 2018, we surveyed, not just survey actually, we gathered the data of revenue per merchants in Bukalapak and saw that the increase in a year, on average, for each of the merchants who are selling in our platforms is threefolds every year. So that's sort of the impact that we create into these SMEs. Now, go back in 2010, because it was still very, very early at the time, there was no VC communities. There was no startup communities. I'm not sure about Endeavor Indonesia at the time, but at least we haven't heard about it. So the situation of entrepreneurship at the time was so different than it is now, in Indonesia at least. Now when you want to start a tech company or a startup company in Indonesia, you have a lot of networks. You have VC communities. You have a lot of tech startups events. You have a lot of mentors and so on and so forth. So it was really difficult at the time. In 2010, we tried to raise fund, only 10,000 US dollars, around that. No one wanted to invest. No one, literally no one. So we did just bootstrap our company. You know, what's the capital that we will be looking for anyway, right? Okay, just for salary for the staff and maybe some ads in Facebook and Google and stuff like that. Then maybe we can fund by ourselves. So that's the initial story. The second, how to attract the merchants, right? Because as a marketplace, it's a double-sided platform. And maybe if people who are in technology are already familiar with this, but in a marketplace, you have two types of customers, right? There is buyers on one side, and there is seller on another side. How do you start? Because you cannot get buyer if there is no product in the platform from the sellers. But you cannot attract seller if there is no buyer, right? Turns out we have to do in parallel. We have to do both. We have to attract seller, but at the same time, we try to attract buyer as well. Luckily for us, because we are having a technology background, we know a bit about SEO and stuff like that, making our website searchable when you search something in Google. So when you search like buy shoes in Bahasa Indonesia, our website actually ranks #1. At the same time, we attract the merchants to, instead of acquire them, ask them to sell the goods in Bukalapak, we instead ask their permission. Hey, sir, I know that you don't want to, you're not interested to sell the products in Bukalapak. Can we upload your products on your behalf? So you don't need to do anything. It's just that if there is order, then you do it, and then you fulfill it. That's it. So that's the level of things that we need to do. There's this saying that CEO is actually chief everything officer, because you actually need to do everything by yourself, right? And that's really matters when you first start out a company, because it's a matter of dying, right? If you're not going extra mile, then there's a good chance that you will not successful. So in 2011, after a year, those strategy streams worked. At the time, we didn't want to raise fund, but there is investor actually offering us to offer investment more than $100,000. So that's actually something that we learned as well, that, okay, this is something that might work big in the future. So we tried to focus. So between 2010 2011, we did double job, creating Bukalapak, but also doing something else on the side. Do a lot of jobs as an IT people. You know, we create website for others and then get paid for that. But since the first investment in 2011, we tried to focus. We decided to focus on that, and then focusing on creating more platforms in Bukalapak. Over time, in 2012, we got more Series A and then Series B from both local and global investors. There are a couple investors from Singapore, China, US as well, 500 startups among them, and from Indonesia as well. Recently, in 2017, we became one of the unicorns, which are the company with valuation over $1 billion US. So next. So this is where we are at the moment. We have 4 million plus merchants in our platform nowadays. We have over 50 million registered users in the platforms. We also have close to 2 million kiosks. I'll explain about that in a bit. But that's the size of us nowadays. Next. So I talk about the kiosks and things like that. This is also something that is interesting. Everyone is trying to go online, right? And you must, because that is the one that is giving you the network effect. The reason why platforms like Bukalapak and Grab and Google, Facebook, and others can succeed and growing really, really fast is because of the network effect. Network effect is the fact that you join the platform because everyone else is joining it, right? So here, I'm not sure everyone is using WhatsApp, maybe, right? The reason why we are using WhatsApp is not because of free, but because everyone is using it. Maybe you remember when you first time using WhatsApp, not because you want to download it, but because someone else asked you to install it, right? That's the reason why, for example, in Indonesia, I'm not sure about here, in Indonesia, no one is using WeChat because no one is using it. But if you go to China, everyone is using WeChat. So I went to China a few months ago. I installed WeChat to talk with people there. I go back from China, I uninstall it because no one in Indonesia used that, right? Same thing. You go to South Korea, for example, you need to install KakaoTalk, and then you uninstall it again after you go back. So that's network effect. The fact that the platform itself becomes much more valuable as you accumulate more users, because it will bring more reasons for people outside of the platform to join your network. For the case of Bukalapak, the network effect works like this. The more sellers in the platform, obviously supply and demand, you will have more competitive products, right? The pricing becomes cheaper. Overall, the products in Bukalapak is cheaper than in offline markets, and probably true for Amazon or Alibaba. Because the product is cheap, so it will bring more people to buy, right? There are more buyers, and hence more revenue for merchants, as mentioned for the case of Bukalapak, right? Because more revenue for merchants, then the merchants who are not joining the platform see, right, that the successful of this merchant who has joined the platform, they're interested to join as well, right? Oh, this guy becomes successful after selling Bukalapak. I want to join as well. So it becomes snowball effect, right? More buyers attract more sellers, and then more sellers attract more buyers. So that's the network effect. And it's not just in e-commerce, but also in social media, in any platforms in online, to be honest. But we are also thinking that how can we expand after this, right? So starting in 2017 or 18, we actually also started going offline, the opposite of this online. So before, we are just online platform, creating a platform, online platform for everyone to be able to sell and buy through the platform. But in reality, in Indonesia right now, the percentage of the market of online is only about 5% of total retail. Meaning, right now, the e-commerce size in Indonesia is about 15 to 20 billion US dollars. Yes, it's very, very big, but total retail in Indonesia is 20 times that. So a lot of people are still buying in this mom and pop kiosk. So can we do something about it? So we are now working with these guys, these mom and pop kiosks. How? To target this 95%. Essentially, that's the background. So now, these kiosks becomes our partner or agents. So if you are online savvy in Indonesia, you can directly buy something online through Bukalapak apps. If you are not online savvy, like my mom and dad, this is, to be honest, this is one way for me to test how is the penetration of e-commerce in Indonesia. Once my mom and dad is using Bukalapak, then it becomes mass market. Now it's not, and I don't want to force. I just want to see, okay, are they using Bukalapak yet? Okay, not yet. Meaning that the penetration of e-commerce in Indonesia are still early, so to say. The growth of the market in 2018 is still 100% year on year. So that's why it's still very big. But again, the offline is still very big as well, 95%. So that's why we are targeting this so that we can target the mass market people like my mom and dad, right? So if you are not online savvy, you can still go to this mom and pop kiosk, but then essentially you buy online through offline places. And it grew successful. Now we have partnered with over 1.6 million of these kiosks. So you go to Jakarta and some other big cities in Indonesia, in fact into second, third tier cities as well, you will find kiosks which has been branded Bukalapak partner or something like that. Next. So again, so maybe some of the lesson that we can learn from here is that first, when we first started the business, obviously we didn't think that it will be this big, but now we can see that this is the market that we are targeting in, right? We are targeting the SMEs, which contributes to majority of the business in Indonesia, and I believe in some countries in Southeast Asia as well, including in Vietnam. I saw a lot of things, especially is a bit similar. The way that the retail is organized, there is no like, of course there is Circle K or something like that, but I believe that majority of the retail still happens in this mom and pop kiosk. So something that can be learned as well. Next. Next. The other thing that we also expanded is actually a fintech, financial technology. This is something that has been popular. But one thing that we are trying to grasp is that it seems it is now becoming a hype. Everyone is doing fintech. Everyone is doing fintech. Oh, this is going to be a big thing. This is going to be the next e-commerce and stuff like that. As a result, in Indonesia alone, there are more than 200 fintech companies. I cannot even name more than 10, but there are more than 200 companies. Why? Because they see that this will be the next growth. So e-commerce in Indonesia is growing fast. It's like a first wave. The second wave is the fintech, because it's tapping into the wave of the e-commerce. Because in e-commerce, you need payment. And then as a merchant, you need loan, for example, working capital loan, and so on and so forth. So the way to define what's the next, what's the potential business going forward is potentially to address the next wave. What's going to be the next wave, right? Logistics in Indonesia is also one thing. This is something that is also riding the wave of the e-commerce, because we need to deliver the goods, right? Because we're selling physical goods. In Indonesia, we have 17,000 islets, so the logistics situation is challenging, and so now we also see a lot of startups in logistic players. Now going back to fintech, what's different about Bukalapak is that we built the fintech on top of already established ecosystem of buyers and merchants. So now, for example, because we have all the data, we know, again, the revenue of the merchants, right? We know exactly like this revenue of particular merchants, probably $1,000 a month. Another merchant, potentially $2,000 a month. So we can use that data to build a credit scoring system so that we can give a reasonable loan to these guys. And similarly for the buyers as well. I mentioned earlier that in Indonesia, we have very, very few people having credit card. So maybe we can offer installment or financing service to these guys as well. Next. Another thing is what we call as well a investment. So in Indonesia, people don't understand about mutual funds, money markets, and so on and so forth. When we launched this, Buka Reksa essentially meaning open mutual fund. So we explain to people, people ask, what is Buka Reksa? Essentially, what is open mutual fund? I said that open mutual fund is mutual fund. What is mutual fund? So that's the level of understanding of mass Indonesian people, right? But apparently it becomes successful because essentially it provides them alternative investment than just putting your money in your saving account in the bank, right? In Indonesia, saving account probably like 1 or 2% interest rate per year. But with this money market fund, you can get 5-6% return a year. So good money, right? If you see first, they try only like $10, $20, but they see that, oh, this actually brings me more money than to saving account in the bank. So people put more money. Now this is also successful because as an e-commerce platforms, we hold the money, right? When people buy something in the platform in Bukalapak, they don't pay the merchants directly, but instead they pay directly to Bukalapak. We hold the money until the seller sends the good to the buyer. After the goods are received by the buyer, only then we will release the money to the merchants. So when we release the money to the merchants, before we just release the money to their bank account, but now more and more people choose to just invest that money, and they only withdraw as necessary. So that's something that even the government of Indonesia really likes, because this really helps them in terms of their vision regarding financial inclusion. Essentially, Indonesian government wants more people, including mass market, to know and be able to access more financial services products. Our recent focus has been also to have an alignment with the government. I personally myself quite sometimes meet with Minister of ICT, Minister of SME, Minister of Finance. In fact, tomorrow, unfortunately, I need to go back. I need to go from Vietnam to New Zealand to other events because I will meet with some of the Indonesian ministers there as well. So that's some of the focus that we are doing in terms of the expansion. Next. Next. I think I mentioned about this. Right now, we are one of the unicorns in Indonesia. Indonesia has 4 unicorns now. We have over 2,000 talents. So yes, it's different challenges than when we started the company. We have over 1,000 tech talents. So out of these 2,000, almost half is actually in technology. So engineers, AI, IoTs, and stuff like that. By the way, maybe you guys already understand now what is the best technology. The best technology, I think, is not driven by the type of technology. The best technology is one that can solve the local problem, right? So the technology that works in Bukalapak might not necessarily be technology that can be applied in Vietnam, right? And that's why in Indonesia, for example, we don't see driverless car yet, as it is now, because so much traffic, right? The driverless car will just crash because so many unresponsible drivers. So, but because of the traffic, we need the motorcycle taxi, right? I saw in Vietnam as well. That's sort of the technology. Similarly as well, right? In Indonesia, for example, we potentially don't need unmanned stores like what Amazon developed in the US. At least not for now, because in Indonesia we have so many small mom and pop kiosks. Can we leverage technology to help them? Because that's the problem. That's the situation as it is now. That is my answer to that live TV interview regarding the best technology. Next. So I think I'm gonna streak this next. Some of our recent initiatives as well, as mentioned by Linda, we actually try to go global now. We start to export into 5 countries: Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. We are looking at Vietnam, no worries. But yeah, as it is now, well, we just launched in these 5 countries. Hopefully, if things goes well, we can increase more presence in more countries as well. So yeah, I think that's it for me. In summary, I think Bukalapak has been growing very, very fast to the point that I learned as a founder myself, I learned a lot. Something when you started the company, for example, when you are only 5 people, then what you care about is just whether the company will survive or not. That's why when you're 5 people, you need people who are willing to die for your company. You are not going to succeed if everyone doesn't have that this is actually my life, right? When you're 6 to 20 people, for example, you probably need to care more about the clarity of the job, like who's responsible for what. Oh, this one is doing marketing. Oh, this one is doing finance. Oh, this one is doing engineer. Yes, you can still help each other, but you need to start to have more clarity on who's responsible for what. When you have 20 to 50 people, for example, you need to start to have a good organizations. Who's gonna be replacing this guy if this guy's 6, for example? Who's reporting to who? When you are 100 people plus, it's going to be different again. When you have 2,000 plus, it's going to be different again, to the point that sometimes I don't know if there's some of my staff who come to Vietnam because, yeah, no, there's no excuse, my fault. But that's a challenge again, right? And then in terms of the other things, like regarding the funding, regarding the customers, regarding the even the personal life as well, something that sometimes cannot be separated between my life and the company life. Sometimes I just tweet one thing, it become news, online news. So we need to be careful as well. And then even we have now a corporate communication team who are managing our social media. No, I'm still managing it, but sometimes if I want to post a bit of controversial issue, I need to guidance from the corporate communication team. So those are some of the examples of the challenges. And then again, Endeavor, thank you, Linda, and everyone from Endeavor has been a great partner. We have been around for 3 years with Endeavor now. I access again a lot of mentors from Endeavor, also access a lot of other entrepreneurs as well. and then join some of the programs, and including the executive education that I will join in Stanford next month. So if some of you are there, we'll see you there. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vu Lam. I am the founder and CEO of KMS Technology. I have been in the Vietnam IT industry for a long time. I have started in Vietnam with Paragon Solutions that eventually became CSC and is now called DXC. KMS Technology has been around for about 10 years or so. And as part of KMS Technology, KMS Technology is now around 1,000 person doing outsourcing to clients in the US as well as Australia. And KMS Technology is also a software product companies. We have 3 product companies that are out in various stages of maturity. One is post exit, a couple is in growing stages, and one is in incubation that is going to launch sometime later this year. So as far as questions around how to grow technology-based companies that are leveraging resources in Vietnam and selling to the world, I hope I can provide some insights.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Wen, founder and CEO of Tracing Social. Tracing Social is a fintech AI company. We joke that we are micro multinational. So when we have 5 people, we have people in 4 countries. So now we have 250 people in 7 countries. And what we do is we solve the financial inclusion challenge in emerging markets by using new data sources plus the AI technology so that we can reliably evaluate credit risks of hundreds of millions of people and therefore enable them to get access to credit in a formal banking system. So Tracing Social today provide credit score to nearly 500 million people. We just signed another contract last night, which bring that number to about 700 million people in Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. And our target is to cross 1 billion score consumers by end of this year.
Impressive, yeah. Okay, Nick.
Hello, everybody. I come from the coffee house. I hope that everybody in this room already have at least heard about the name of my companies. So now currently we're starting for 5 years already. This is the happy birthday 5 years of my company in the next month. Now we have around 170 stores around Vietnam. Actually, when Miss Lan Anh invited me to the panels, I very worried because I still on the mood of learning and not yet have a lot of experience to say about the scaling up because we still on the way to find a way to scaling up. But I think the most important I can bring here because as a responsibility, as the first endeavor entrepreneur of Vietnam, I have to go here and share with you my experience for the 3 months to be the endeavor. Firstly, so because when I realized, revisit my life, I see that I first successfully built my first million company when I was 26, when it was 2 million company when I was 27, and 20 million company when I was 30. But after everything, I see that the number is not important because it's never is the reason why we, the entrepreneur, we starting the business. The most important about the business, the vision that we starting, our people, our organization. So I think that's those kinds of spirit that I really want to share with you. Hope at least my experience, my philosophy will help you find some good news, some news.
Thank you, Nick. Actually, you're great people. Actually, I'm very proud to get to know them because of India. Actually, Mr. Lam Vu, in Vietnamese, he should be a Dakar. His big brother also linguistic, actually. He started in 1995, yeah. 5 years before us. We started in 1999, and here in the room we have a British song. So, but we met it after 20 years only because in the other. We never met any time during the 20 years. We do the same thing in Vietnam. So it's so incredible, and I have been involved in the other, and we also surprised me a lot actually. I remember when 2012 actually I met one Japanese banker actually. He introduced automatic loan providing system. Actually, it's enter your name, and they give you interpret. And I asked him, can you do it in Vietnam? He said it's impossible to do it in Vietnam because Vietnam don't have reliable data. And I trust this. But I met Nguyen and said that, okay, even with unreliable data, you still can. It's a new technology, no, not exact data. And he can provide at least 80% accuracy of the credit scoring. And he said that he will launch online banking, online loaning system very soon, which is about 7 years ago for me, imaginable. And the story of Ning actually also very impressive for me when I met him first time when I do second opinion review in the endeavor. Now when the Alanang introduced the company, we have two people actually have to review the candidate. So I met him in the coffee house, and he talked, the way he talked and the way he managed his coffee shop and the way he observed his customer talking with me. So I said that I cannot help him anything. He teaching me. So I am very serious. That I'm very surprised actually how the young people, 29-year-old, can do such a big thing. So all the people are here. It's very important for India, for Vietnam, and for the audience. Okay, for my first question, of course, for our Indonesian partner. You did an incredible job in 2010 and 2017. You become from 0 to 1 billion company. What's the most important moment in this 7 years?
Yeah, I think I agree with the finalists just now that I guess the valuation is not the goal and should not be the entrepreneur's goal. It comes as a nice side effect, I would say, meaning that the goal of the company is always to be profitable, sustainable, and achieving the vision, right? So I mentioned about the Bukalapak vision. We essentially want to empower SMEs in Indonesia, right? That's always the vision from 2010 until now and potentially going forward as well. But in 2010, the means of creating that vision is only through online, by creating an online platform, right? And then in 2017-18, the means actually expanded into offline kiosks as well. So why this vision is becoming so important? Because it's what separates good entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneur. Right now in Indonesia, at least, I see entrepreneurs become a little bit of hype, meaning that a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. A lot of people think that, oh, you know what, to be an office worker is not my thing. I'm special. I don't want to be office worker with name card staff. I want to have a name card CEO, founder, boss, managing director, whatsoever, right? Because they also see what's happened with Bukalapak and then Gojek and other big companies. They think that, oh, you know what, these guys seem successful despite young age, right? So if I start entrepreneurship, I maybe become successful like them. That's a wrong mindset, right? Because what they don't see is the value or the difficulties behind that, right? They see only the successful, whereas the statistics say that 99% of the entrepreneurship actually fails, 90% plus. So if they only successful, if they only see the successful, when they start the entrepreneurship and then find difficulties, they realize that it's actually not true, right? Oh, apparently not easy to be successful. It's easier for them to give up. But if you have a vision, it will keep you awake. It will keep you. It will remind you whenever you face problem that you know what, I have this vision. And for Bukalapak case, it's also, I call it beautiful, because we can only succeed by making a lot of people succeed, right? So our success depends on our merchants' success. That's why we are becoming success as we are helping other people. So that's why we try to keep that value not just within the founders, but also within the employees that, look, we are here not just developing apps, we are actually here for improving the values or the life of the merchants. So yes, you might be some programmer, or you must be you probably just customer service agent whatsoever, but your what you're doing helps the prosperity of SMEs. So that's the vision that we always try to articulate within the company.
Okay, thank you. But my question is more specific actually. You said the vision important to unify the people. So when you face what problem you face in you during it, what's the most painful problem you face?
Yeah. I mentioned about the people challenges
Okay.
during my presentation. The other thing is, luckily, as a technology company, we have big data
Okay.
theory, right? Meaning that whenever we face problem, we can just look at the data. If we, for example, see the declining in sales, for example, or the revenue, we can before the big data, when we find the root cause of the why the revenue or sales decrease, right? We see we can only know the revenue or sales this month, maybe next month, right? Let's say this is July. Maybe we can only find out the July revenue in August, right? But in Bukalapak now, we can track everything real time. I can know exactly how's the revenue of Bukalapak today until 5 p.m. And how is it compared, for example, with Bukalapak revenue until 5 p.m. yesterday. So that automation, big data analysis, everything helps us so that whenever we face problem, we can then isolate the problem, find the root cause, and then direct to the relevant team. So because before, when we face problem, we sometimes judge each other. "Oh, you know what? You're not doing a good work. Hey, wait, this is not my fault, right? This is actually your fault. Your marketing, blah blah blah." With all this big data, we can essentially almost contribute failure, decrease whatever to a specific root cause, so we can solve the problem at that time as well.
I talk about more internet problem when you become successful so quick. Normally, you cannot afford, you cannot accompany, not get familiar. That do you have any problem in the founder team, argument and not?
I think it's common for founders to have disagreement and so on and so forth. I think that is also why when you start the business with the founders, meaning that you have the 2, 3, 4 people running the business, you have to set boundaries on the scope of the work, meaning that, oh, this is actually my responsibility. Let's say marketing is responsibility of my partner, and then technology is another partner. So we might find disagreement, but then if the situation or if the field is something that is not my responsibility,
Okay.
in the end I leave to that the one who is responsible.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask question because I know that many Vietnamese companies start the e-commerce, the marketplace very early, but none of them grow up like a side like a Bulakapak. Mostly because of the internet problem, they disagree with the direction, disagree with the way to do together, even disagree with how to split the wealth together. So your answer is very clear that you should have clear vision, common vision, what you're doing forward, and clear responsibility in the team. So it's very important, actually. Okay, I come back to my big brother. He's younger than me, but so what bring you to Vietnam to start outsourcing business 20 years ago?
I think the common theme is what Nin said and Rajin said is it's about vision, right? You have to have a passion, you have the vision, and you want to achieve that vision. My vision when I came to Vietnam way back then was that I always felt that I was a fortunate one. I left Vietnam. I was raised in the U.S. Education system. I went to a good school. I got a good job. But I keep thinking back about my school friends. And I said, there's a bunch of my school friends that were smarter than me. If they ever had an opportunity to get an education like I did, get a chance to become an engineer like I did, they do a better job than me. Can I come back to Vietnam and help create an environment where smart kids who are willing to work hard have a chance to do have a job in a career that leverage their skill. And I visited Vietnam, and I see that there were a few small shops that did some IT work, but they were coding in Access and Fox Pro, and doing accounting system for small shops there, and get paid for a little bit, and they make extra money by teaching and doing IT work, and it was not an IT career. So that was my goal. My passion was to help create such a thing as a career for a software engineer. And so whatever trouble, whatever issue, whatever problem I ran into, keeps going back and ask myself, have I done that? Have I done that? Have I done that? Until I felt like that dream or that vision was becoming true. So again, it wasn't about to become a cool entrepreneur. It wasn't to get rich, but to make a vision come true.
So make dream. Thank you. So anh Vũ came to Vietnam 1995. Is that after the American embargo lifted? Yeah. You're a pioneer. If you bought a lot of land now, you become much richer.
That's what people say, but that wasn't my goal, right? If I want to be richer, I'd be richer, but not happier.
And then you're going. You're going to help your classmate, who left he left behind. Okay, thank you. Nguyen, my question is, you dream to have a bank, or you said that you have a very good credit scoring system. You can essentially replace the bank.
No, I don't think so.
We do everything automatically, actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
we consider ourselves as infrastructure layer for lending, and our passion is in product and AI, and we are not a operational heavy organization, and we want to keep it that way. That's my passion. That's the company's passion of driving the science and the technology to create this infrastructure layer that impact billions of people, instead of building a bank with, let's say, $5 billion, $10 billion loan book and become decacorn like lenders. It just not our passion and not our vision.
I think that's why I asked question, because the vision, you need to have such vision, because as a SME now in Vietnam, it's very difficult to get a loan from the bank. Now, I would support some companies, small one, but impossible for them to get the loan from the bank. So if you have your own system, you can put my name and you can give me credit. Much better for me to go now for, you call it, vay nóng là cái gì nhỉ? What in English?
Black market.
Black financial market, very high interest rate. Yeah, I'm agree. I'm serious. You thinking about us? To replace the black market at least.
So I think for Tracing Social to become a billion-dollar company is actually not that difficult, because basically if you have a well-managed loan book of $1 billion, then the market will value you around that, right? And in Vietnam, in the last 3 years, we probably already have directly acquired by $800 million. So it's actually not difficult for Tracing Social to build such a loan book and manage that loan book. But our vision is to impact billions of people, right? Right. Right now we are provide credit score to about 10% of the world's adult population, and our goal in the next 10 years is to provide credit score and therefore credit access to 60% of the world's adult population. So that is something that set Tracing Social apart from everybody else, and that's also helped us to attract the top talent, right? So the first advisor that we have is actually a CEO of Chase Education and Motor, Auto Loans. He managed a $100 billion loan book, right? He came and helped us when we have two guys. The first guy that worked for Tracing Social was actually PhD in computer vision, and unfortunately later his company got acquired by Microsoft and he could not join us full time. The first intern turned out an offer from Amazon for $7,000 per month and joined us sleeping on the floor for 3 months in Silicon Valley in my friend's living room. The first two guys that we hired in Vietnam won 3 first prizes in National Olympiad in computer science. So the vision and the social impact that we long for attracts certain kind of talent, and that's give the certain type of satisfaction that is not the money, it's not the maximizing whatever value of the company. It is so we used to joke that we want to be a $0 billion company, not a $0 million company. and the social impact is something that we want to achieve and not. Yeah.
So I still thinking that you own the bank, you will make more social impact then. Okay, because his passion is to create a system. He's a technical guy, and actually he don't care about who uses it.
To be fair, right? Every 1 in 3 consumer loans in Vietnam use our credit score.
Yeah.
And we have opened up an entire new segment for consumer lending in Vietnam, which is cash loan for new-to-bank consumers. So before Choosing Social, mostly you cannot borrow if you have no relationship before with a particular financial institution. And now that segment is well established, and is the fastest growing segment in Vietnam. So I think in terms of impact, we actually make more impact doing that. For example, every year about 6 million loans have been granted based on our credit score in Vietnam, which is 30% of the market. And if we were a lender, in the first year maybe we're going to do 10,000 loans. Second year will be 100,000 loans. Third year would be like, but
okay.
It not going to be that fast.
Okay, I understand. Your choice. Okay, send to Ning, yeah, youngest guy. You said that you make $1 million when 26 years old, huh? Ning, he made $1 million when he was 26 years old, So do you have any dream to make that's $1 billion? Yeah.
Before I make I build my first million company, I have a dream that I become million. So the distance between the 0 to 1 million is very high.
Okay.
But after you achieve 1 million, 2 million, 20 million, and even now we are looking for 100 million, it's still the same. Just is the number. So it's no much different between
It really
2 million.
don't make any difference for you.
Yes, I think so. At least
For most
until
people
now.
here, 1 million and 100 million make any difference. For me, it's a lot.
I can tell that from 0 to 1 million, totally different.
Okay.
Totally different between
Okay.
0 to 1 million. But from 1 million to 2 million, just another million.
So we can give money to Endeavor, actually. If you have extra money,
For sure that in the future, but let me just correct one small thing that I build a million company, not that I have
like
1
million.
million.
Okay. Sorry.
It is very
So not cash.
Yeah.
It's very important, You have a company, 1 million company very different than 1 million.
And the
US
company
dollar,
is belong to a lot of shareholder. Not
Okay, come back to our most important topic of this panel is how to scale. Linda said that Endeavor focus is on scale up company actually. Startup, when you start up in the first few years, very difficult. We have to fight for surviving, and normally we cannot rely on anybody. Then you make some money, some customer, you have a system, everything. Then you have another problem. How you have stuck. You don't know what direction to go up. Very, very much like a kid, when he's growing up, you have say 12-year-old, you get mature, get losing direction. A lot of advice from other people, you don't know what to do. And there is always a painful moment in the development of the company. So I want each of you to share your memory about this in your development of company.
Let me say first because it is one of my
Okay.
painful every day. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So actually, after a while, I doing the business, I realized that I always said that this to me and this to my team also. The limitation of the business is the limitation of the CEO and the limitation of the management of the business. How far we can go, how fast we can go, depend on how fast we can learn and grow ourselves. So actually, it is one of the key challenging for us is for the past 5 years, we only grow with 200, 300% in revenue in the business side. But as a pupil, we cannot grow for ourselves 200%. Come on, you still be you. You still be you. You cannot become another version of you just in 1 year. So the idea is we find is very simple. At the beginning, we find it's very simple. If we cannot do, let's find the other people in the market can help us to deliver the job. And last Nam just asked about the painful experience. I can say that one of my very painful experience during running the business is I have to find one of my best friend, one of my best employee also, because we made the wrong choice when we hiring people. When you do sometimes when you do successful, a lot of I think at that time I hear a lot of advisor from the venture capital from the successful. They always advise me that think about 5 years down the road. Ning, what do you want your business become? Hire the people for the 5 year. Hire the people to ready to go. And exactly I do the same. I think it's quite very smart advice. I go to the market, talk with the top people in the market, and sometimes that luckily I find one person like this come to the business. Then I realize that actually we are not ready, because we as the entrepreneur, we still just like Sunset, we have to fight to survive. So the business have to find the way to survive in the next 18 months. So the people we bringing into organization, not because they're not good, not because their capability, it's because you didn't provide the big player or the big game for them to ready yet. So it's not, so after 18 months, I have to have a franking conversation with one of my closest friends that said we have to find the new way, and tomorrow we have to running this business without you. So it is one of my most painful experience, and I always talk to myself that You can read a lot news, a lot of beautiful things in the internet, in the books, but sometimes you have to be very practical. You have to still running the business for 18 months, and sometimes fighting the people is one of the way up. You lazy yourself. It is a retreat of yourself. You have to develop yourself to growth. Have to put the pressure for yourself and your team to growth if you really want the business growth. I see a lot of people said that people is important to the business. I said that's true. That's very true. But please think the people as the people system. I mean, people cannot be any individual, because when you said individual means people important means they are assets. A lot of people said that people is my biggest asset of the company. I think this is not a good way to thinking about it, develop the organization. Because when you think the people is assets, of course you don't want to lose people. You don't want to lose your assets. But the business grow and assets, we at some point we cannot grow ourselves anymore to fit with the business. So we have to find the people system. In the people system mean you cannot let anyone to be the bottleneck of the business, even you, even the CEO, even the founder. You have to prepare for the business to grow without any particular individual. And I think if that day happen, you are very successful on running the business.
Okay, thank you. Anh Vũ.
I wish I was as smart as he was when I was his age. In saying that, I started out business with just passion. I was a software engineer. Decided to go ahead and start out on something that I had no clue on how to go ahead and build a business, let alone scale a business, and made many mistakes. Luckily, I had a chance to start over. And in starting over, before starting over, I spent a lot of time thinking about understanding now there's the journey starts with the idea, the startup stage, scaling, and then continue to grow, and what it takes to not make the mistakes that I made earlier. And I think the theme is around people, and I agree with Nin. It's not blindly believing in people, but having a system, a way to treat people fairly, and the key word is fairly, right? Allowing people to do what they're best at, and not put people in position to fail. And if the team you have is no longer enough to help your business grow, extend the team in a way that does not make the people you already have on the team feel like they failed. Right? Everybody has strength and gaps, and the way the team has to work is we all need to understand and believe in that approach. When we need more skills, we add more skills. It doesn't have to be 5 years ahead, like you said, because then you're bringing somebody who comes in and says, "What do you want me to do now? Because let me go to vacation for 4 years and I'll come back." Right? But it's very important that the team start out with a common belief and system on how we work with each other and how we grow and how we treat each other. And so now you're no longer fighting an internal battle. You're just now focused on the business problems, right? And so that's one of the criteria that helps you get beyond the startup stage. The other is being able to admit that you don't know enough. You don't know everything. You know enough, and be willing to seek out advice. So the second company, KMS, when I started, I went out and looked for advisors, and I have a couple of trusted advisors that's been with me for the last 8-9 years, and it's good to have somebody who's not so tied into the business, that's so blindly
Outsider.
yes, an outsider who is just not so tied to your vision and your passion, who just said, no, that's not what it is. It's not what you say it is, because this is what I see. And so being able to take advice and say that, I'm pretty good, but I need help. So and that help can comes in terms of people, advice, as well as funding. If you need funding to grow, say that yes, this is a stage where we need partners to come in and help us grow the company. You can't do it alone, and being able to understand that is another part of being able to get into the growth stage and get past the startup stage. With all that being said, it sounds hard, right? It's not simple. I readily admit that I made multiple mistakes before I'm wise enough to have these concepts that I hope, being part of endeavor, I can share back to others that are coming along this path. And as Linda said, something she said in the board meeting that she didn't say here is that there are people that can help you get unstuck. At times, you get stuck, and you can't get your way out of being stuck. And when you realize you're in a stuck position and then you can't help yourself, go out and get help and get yourself past that stage so you can continue on your growth path. It is not a general advice I can give everybody, because everybody's situation is different. But understand that there are, be very self-aware about what you and your team can do, and seek help when you need it.
Thank you. When you have any painful moment to share? Painful moment of grow.
Well, we have a near-death experience.
Okay.
So we started out as a alternative credit scoring as an entry point.
Okay.
So at the time, when we started out in 2013, we used Facebook and other social data sources for evaluating credit risk, and try different markets like student loan market in the U.S. Very big, very inefficient, and the key problem is to predict who will drop out of college and therefore cannot pay back student loans, right? So Chase loved the idea, with them for a long, long time to get through the compliance, and ended up saying that, okay, we'll die before we get this approval, so let's move on. So then we had a very successful pilot with the biggest conglomerate in Malaysia for using social data to underwrite motorbike financing loans in the biggest motorbike financing portfolio in Malaysia. And this conglomerate wanted to use Trusting Social Credit Score to give out subsidized handsets to launch a new telco. So they want to launch a new mobile operation network, right? And they basically want to give out, millions of handsets using our credit score only. So we were like at the trajectory of, being awesome. And then Facebook announced that they're gonna shut down most of the APIs which we drive data from. So we were like in months basically get stuck there. Keep working on the model because just don't know what to do, knowing that Facebook will shut down the APIs in the next few months, right? And the team members asked me, when will you stop paying your own pocket money to pay for us, right? And so that's kind of painful lesson that don't trust platforms.
So you also platform, you know. You are platform and you say don't you know. You
No,
have
I
to-
guess
you have to trust
we
platform
are.
anyway.
I know it's like it gives so difficult questions, but that's our experience,
Okay, I understand. Don't
and
trust Facebook, exactly. Don't
yeah,
trust
don't
Facebook.
trust Facebook.
Okay. Okay, Farim, you want to comment on the issue?
Um, I think I can comment on what Nin mentioned as well, because I guess that's the common theme that happens to almost many fast-growing startups, right? Especially when you grow your company 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a year, for example. Let's say 2 times a year, very modest. If you grow 2 times a year, in 9 years, you will be growing at um, what 500 times,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
understand.
two to the power of 9, which is about 500 times. Now the question is regarding the people is that sometimes people who help you to this point is not the correct person that your company need going forward, right? Let's say a sales team who maybe get you deal of 1,000 US dollars, for example, 10,000 US dollars. It's good, but when you need deals of $1 million, then this might not be the right person, right? So what should we do with this guy? He's already doing so good so far, but because the company grows so fast that this guy doesn't perform anymore. But he's been so good. Should we fire him? Just fire him, or what, right? So it's always a challenge because there is no right and wrong question to that questions. Um, it depends on the case. Most of the time, we try to recruit more senior people, and then put the previous guy who helped us before into this guy, hoping that they can work together. The senior people bring more experiences from, let's say, from the previous example, handling $1 million deal. But the previous guy, the one that has been in the company for many years, can help on the insight on the good of the company and so on. But sometimes it also doesn't work. Sometimes they have a clash between this old guy and the new guy, and sometimes we again have to value the company itself. Now, I agree also that it can also even happen to founders, right? So even myself, sometimes I wonder whether I still am the right person for the company going forward. That's always been a question for the founders, and we see a lot of example from even from the global tech companies, right? We see Steve Jobs fired from Apple, although he went back many years later, and then we also see
Yahoo.
Google, right?
Yahoo.
And Yahoo as well. And then recently Uber, right? Travis Kalanick stepped down. Facebook, let's see. Zuckerberg still stands, but it's still we can see a lot of pressure, right, to him for him to be stepping down because of the recent scandals. But those are some examples that, first of all, as a founder, sometimes we need to question as well ourselves. Are we the right person for the company going forward? If so, how should we improve ourselves? For sure, we have to keep learning as well. And not just regarding the day-to-day situation, but sometimes also to upgrade the skills, right? For example, I recently learned about blockchain. Why? Because blockchain is considered the one that can replace whatever marketplace platform model. So I want to learn this because I don't want to be out of the market, right? And then AI and then IoT and stuff like that. Something that at least as a leader of the company, I also need to keep update. And then same thing also for the person in our control regarding how should we do. We need to separate between their contribution in the past and their potential contribution in the future. From then we can have a clear judgment. The second so-called issues or painful experience that I or keep experience now, because I mentioned about Bukalapak stories, but as you know as well, in Indonesia or Southeast Asia, we are not the only players, right? We have so many other players as well. In Vietnam, I guess there's also Lazada. I'm not sure if Shopee is here. But those are, for example, those two examples of our competitors. When we first got investment in 2011, I mentioned that we got more than 100,000 US dollars. Now Lazada started in 2012 with, if I'm not mistaken, 100 million US dollars. And then we, at the time, almost, okay, should we give up or what? 100,000, 100 million, right? But we decided to continue. Look, we were going fast. Let's see how it goes. Right now, we are already bigger than Lazada in Indonesia. So because again, that's just we wanted to. Although I'm not saying that right now we are successful. Why? Because the battle still continues, right? I mean, Lazada, Shopee, everyone's still raising fund, hundreds billion US dollars and stuff like that. So it still continues. So that's why this improvement is also something that is never ending so far. Something that as a person I always keep what's happening in the markets, who's doing what can we do to be better, what can we do to provide differentiation. So the offline examples, for example, is actually one of the unique differentiation that we have in the market as it is now. But again, there can be cases where competitors just come in, throw in more money, and then copying the models, right? In fact, it happens a lot of times when we create features. Sometimes the features can be copied by competitors, right? What should we do? Well, we can continue to improve, right? They copy based on what happened in us, but they might not understand the full context on why we are developing this kind of feature, right? So maybe we can have a leverage in terms of what we want to do with that feature going forward. Again, this is something that I can not say that we are successful at the moment because it's something that is still ongoing, but it's something that obviously I can share to you so that everyone can learn.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I use the Vajip want to sum up the discussion. Very important for a company to grow. It like the founder have to grow faster than company. You know, you want to ask your question now. Are you fit for company or not? You know, if you are not fit, so you can take a side. But you think okay, you go up. You need to learn and grow faster than company, and it's very important. Conclusion. Actually, I want to leave audience to have the question. To so how many? Okay, cô Anh. Yeah.
The seller in Indonesia, right? If you can control their revenue, is that very sensitive information? I think lots of people fail to convince me that. Should I show them how much I earn a month? Is that privacy?
Yeah, so I mentioned one of the example that we are doing in the early days were for us to be more active, right? Instead of acquiring merchants, we ask their permission so that we can list their products in the company. And then right now we have a lot of data again, so we can see that these merchants in particular are already selling how many products or how many transactions in the last 12 months or 24 months. We also built communities of merchants across Indonesia. We are already present in more than 150 cities in Indonesia. So you go to whatever cities in Indonesia, from Jakarta, Bali, Jogja, and some other cities, you will find Bukalapak merchant communities in that particular city, in these 150 cities. So we have a good engagement with all of these merchants. So something that new merchants or merchants who want to join Bukalapak, we let them to find these communities. So these communities are not our employees, right? Again, they are actually customers, but they are like our partners in this business. So we are free for the merchants to contact with these communities. So these merchant communities, usually they gather a month, every month. What do? One, they share their stories among themselves, like the tips, like the newest products, so that the new merchants can learn from them, so that the new merchants can learn from already quite successful, or what we call a seller, a small seller becomes medium sellers, right? Because as mentioned, there.
I think that his question is more about financing. So you have to disclose your revenue.
No, we don't disclose revenue. And then, in fact, so for the merchants to join the Bukalapak platform, it's
Yeah.
actually free. So we don't charge anything. So
No, you know their revenue.
I know their revenue,
Yeah.
but we don't disclose that unless unless if the merchants want to disclose by themselves, let's say to get the financing or whatsoever. So we pass that data of the revenue of the merchants uh, by their consent. So not from every merchants, but let's say merchants who, hey, I want to get credit or I want to get financing. So we give, okay, then you let me use your data to the financial technology company, or I want to do whatsoever. So we use the data, but by default we don't use the data. What everyone can know is only how many transactions each of these sellers make, because this becomes their reputation. You know, when we as a buyer, we find products in Bukalapak platform, we want to check the reputation of the merchants, right? So from them we can know how many transactions each of the merchants have made. But obviously we don't know the revenue, right? Only the number of transactions.
So do we have to work with the tax authority? Sometimes they ask.
So that's something that why we are engaging with the government, right?
Okay. So why you meet the Minister of Finance tomorrow, huh? Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I would like to ask you, what is the main obstacle prevent you to apply blockchain into your ecosystem?
I think the blockchain itself is still early in Indonesia. First, as a payment, it's not legal. So the bank Indonesia, the Central Bank of Indonesia, they prohibit the use of Bitcoin and any other cryptocurrency in the platforms. So the use of blockchain then limited to other things than payment, right? For example, regarding supply chain and others. But these are, because as a marketplace, we are not 100% control the supply chain, because we are working with logistic partners company. We work together with the banking companies and other payment companies to be able to use the blockchain in other than payment. Then we need together with many of them. Now, because again, the blockchain is still early, at least in Indonesia, we haven't really dig or sort of like finalize what use case can be best by the blockchain. But I guess we're starting to at least discuss the potential of how can we improve the supply chain in terms of the logistics, for example, through blockchain. But it's not, it's not finalized yet.
Okay. Thank you. Question?
Firstly, thank you all the speakers for sharing with us today. And I heard one of the speaker once share that the best technology is the one that can solve the local problem, right? So I want to hear from you, or who has the experience expanding your business in different markets. What was the challenges that you face and how you overcome them to expand to different market, like different countries, in terms of your own business? Is that clear?
So this is another painful experience that we have, right? So in Vietnam, our credit score works beautifully well. And because of that, we start the matchmaking between the borrowers and the lenders, and created a new segment for unsecured personal loan for new to credit consumers. And it captured the market very fast. When we went to Indonesia, we also built a very accurate credit scoring model, start replicating this matchmaking business. And it turns out that the credit loss is about 5 times higher in Vietnam, right? And why is that? we think that it's because Vietnam is much more egalitarian country. So everybody start 1990s about the same level of wealth, which is near zero, right? And since then, the social dynamics in Vietnam has been very healthy, and the equality in terms of gender, in terms of education, which is the intended result of communism, actually helps the capitalism in Vietnam, right? Whereas in Indonesia, we have urban poor, which is very, very big. They get stuck there for generations in Jakarta through ups and downs. And because of that, because we did not anticipate the high level of income inequality, that we get shocked. We basically slapped by on the face, right? And that's kind of create a mini crisis within the company, because we, as an AI company coming to a new country and say that AI will solve your problem, and then suddenly we recommend consumers with 5 times higher than the loss rate than we expected. So over time we have to basically overcome that problem and have to understand the local markets much, much better, right? There might be reasons like the infrastructure on credit bureau did not exist or was not well established. The understanding the population about the credit bureau as a collective punishment mechanism for not paying back the loans. Those are the things that if we fly too high, we're gonna get crashed. So so since then we focus more on hiring local talents, and to be honest with you, being more respectful of the local cultural and economic differences.
Okay, please.
So I have a question for all of you. So basically, when we start doing some new product, in my mind, I was keep questioning about what if my product will bring damage to my user, created some bad effect that I didn't want to happen. So what's in your approach to solve such situation?
So unexpected damage.
Yeah, unexpected event. like we are doing, I'm trying to do in healthcare.
Only coffee again. So the question, anybody in the audience has experience?
Can you expand a little bit more about your
Okay, so
issues?
like I'm trying to develop a solution, devices that contain AI inside to have smoothing, to have great, better living environment for the user. But then I will wonder if one day my AI models will have a glitch. It's doing something wrong, and this will create bad environment, bad effect on customer health. So I'm very scary of such situation, and I don't know how to handle that. And just like you just shared, right, you create a new crisis in the market. How to handle such thing? Because ordinarily I want to say, okay, I will do everything to settle down that thing, to smooth the customer, but that's not a practical thing when you scale. So what's your approach?
So AI only you use AI, and I think that what happened if the credit score system score wrong?
So that happened already, actually. And some of our clients blame ourselves for a stock drip in banking sector in Vietnam. I think early 2018.
Yeah.
So I think AI has a lot of unintended consequences, right?
Course, yeah.
And when you go wrong and you are at a scale that, every month, for example, in Vietnam, every month probably $500 million underwrite because of our credit score. So when we get wrong, the magnitude of the impact is massive. But I think that's a journey that us and our clients have to embark together. And trust is the only thing that have us to endure those crises, right? And in that, for example, after a certain crisis like that, we build a relationship. We build a very transparent communication between the teams. So, for example, stability of our credit score has to be informed automatically to clients even before we review it, right? We inform them every week, and basically all of us together track any small changes in that. And if you have a alert system that can trigger when there's something wrong in your system earlier, then you should be able to minimize that. But in the world of data, it's bound to happen, right? So even when I was at Barclays, a huge global bank with more than 100 years of experience, right? We have incidents like credit score or credit data coming from the top credit bureau in the world, right? One variable get multiplied by 10,000, and it runs for 2 months without being noticed. And because of that, millions of dollars have been impacted because of that single variable. So in this world, disasters will happen, but if you can first be transparent with your clients or your customers on the risk, and second, build in the intelligence to detect anomalies, the sooner the better, then hopefully the technology will mature, right? But the clients will not tolerate you to repeat the same mistake twice, right? So in the first year, maybe you make one mistake a year, but in second year, if you do it again, then you'll be out of business very soon.
Actually, it's a very good question. Actually, we want to talk about how to become big. But become big, being more responsible now, and you are big enough now. When you make something wrong, the impact will be very, very, very big too. So, but okay, come back to the topic today. It's not too far now. Is that talking about how to become big first? Okay, because then maybe next discussion we talk about when we big now, how to avoid making mistake when you're big. Okay, thank you very much for panelists, thank you for speaker. So we have food and drink outside. We can continue the discussion with speaker, with your Sam, and with any question you have. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you a lot.